Now, a couple of days ago, I decided that I was going to switch to the S10 from my iPhone because of the larger screen, the wide lenses on the camera, the headphone jack, and the USB-C port, since this is pretty much everything that I want in a smartphone. At the end of the day, both devices, the S10 and the XS that I have, are incredible. And yes, I know that the S10 is cheaper and overall better bang for your buck, but this video is not about that. Now, it's also worth mentioning that if you have something like the S8 or the S9, then there really isn't much here for you. Of course, I do have a XS currently, so obviously it'd be very different if I had an older iPhone or an older Galaxy. I mean, I'd swap from an iPhone 7 to an S10 in a heartbeat, especially with some of the trade-in offers that Samsung has going on. So yeah, how about I just go real quick with a rundown of my thought process to why I was getting this phone and why I would even take something that I just recently bought like the XS and switch it out for the S10. So first off, it has a headphone jack, which I can use for headphones or just connect like a lavalier microphone. It's really nice and versatile. It keeps things very simple since I still do use wired headphones. It also has a USB-C port, so I can use that same charger as my MacBook or my Nintendo Switch and have no issues. I thought it was really cool that it has 3 lenses, but most importantly, I really dig the wide angle lenses because it makes indoor and outdoor shots really cool in a lot of cases. Another thought of mine was that I do actually still prefer fingerprint sensors over face scanning. I just like being able to open a phone with my finger while I'm pulling it out of my pocket. The other thing is that I really am starting to hate the notch on my iPhone. I've just had it for so long and the bezels and everything is really starting to look outdated. And after seeing the way the hole punch camera looks on the S10, I was just immediately drawn to it. And yeah, that's it. That is my reasoning behind switching to the S10. Unfortunately, the thing is that out of those reasons that I just mentioned, 3 out of 7 of them turned out to be not all that great and not good enough to justify swapping my XS. Now those are the front-facing camera, the rear 3 cameras, and the special fingerprint sensor. One that wasn't on that list that I just wasn't expecting to not like was the color temperatures of the screen, where I couldn't get it to where the whites looked good enough to my liking, but I'll cover that towards the end. For now, I think I'm gonna get into one of the main things of this phone, which is the cameras that it has on there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the sample pictures here so that you guys can see them and talk a little bit about them here. Now, what I'm not gonna do is put the answer key here in the video, so you're not gonna see which phone is which. I will have that in the description, but do not look at the description until after we go through it. That way you can really just look at the pictures and see what side you like better. Now, one of the things that I noticed while using all these cameras and looking at all these pictures and everything that I took was that sometimes it is quite difficult. I mean, sometimes the S10 will blow the iPhone away. I mean, the colors will look incredible. Everything, the whole picture will look like ready for upload and sharing. And other times it comes out really, really bad. There's just this problem with consistency with the S10, which I'm not a huge fan of. Just in my personal use case, I tend to take a lot of pictures around the house, of my cat, of my dog, and not great lighting. And I saw that the S10 would really mess up whenever it was a little bit of low light. It really tries to add a lot of light when it's in low light, and it kind of ruins the shot a lot of times. And other times it's really slow to take the shots and it gets blurry. I had a lot of issues with that, just getting bad shots in general and, you know, just ruining that moment. I tend to just pull out my phone, take a quick picture, put it back in my pocket, and not want to think about it. I'm sure that if I use the Pro mode on the S10 for the camera and set everything properly, then I could get a better picture than on my iPhone, but I don't want to do that. Personally, overall, after looking at all the pictures, I ended up just deciding I do prefer the colors and things coming out of the iPhone, even though sometimes, yeah, the Samsung did beat it out. Just as an overall thing, I was like, you know what? I kind of do like the phone that I have right now. It's not worth switching to it just for the camera. Another thing was that during selfies, it was basically a no-brainer that the XS is going to be just in general better if you do a lot of selfies and things and you like shooting your face for Instagram and stuff like that. I just found the S10 added way too much sharpness and it ruins the look of the skin sometimes. So, and this was mainly indoors. Outdoors, it does really well. And even sometimes it had better color accuracy and it was kind of doing things more nicely to the image than the iPhone. The thing was just, you know, again, overall, like out of 20 shots, how many shots did I like on the S10? How many shots did I like on the iPhone? And for me, the iPhone did win that as well. The only thing I could do was play around with the beauty filter on the S10 to kind of soften the skin a little bit and give it that same look as the iPhone. But yeah, I think that sometimes it's just that the skin tones look better on the iPhone because it tends to prioritize the look and the color over the sharpness and brightness, which I tend to see the S10 do. Again, I could play with the exposure and the ISO and things like that to get a better picture, but that's not something I want to do with my phone. Now let's move on to one of my biggest bummers here, which was the fingerprint sensor. And straight up, it just doesn't work as well as I thought, and it feels more like a gimmick than anything. This is due to the small scan area, so you really do have to put your thumb right dead center. And if I'm a bit off, it just won't scan. So this kind of doesn't allow me to put my finger in my pocket where it's supposed to go, at least not naturally. I mean, I could, like feel out the phone and like put my finger in the middle, whatever, what have you not. But when I'm using something like that, I really want to use it naturally. And by the time that it gets up to where, my hand is to use the phone, I would love for it to be unlocked. And with that fingerprint sensor, that just doesn't do it very well. I just found it to be overall very cumbersome. Is it really cool? Yeah. And does it unlock fast? Yeah, most of the time. But in quick use cases, when you're not thinking about these things and you want just something to work, it just, didn't work for me when I was using it. I think the idea of a fingerprint sensor built into the screen is great, but only if the area is much larger so you can unlock it without having to think about these things. I know you can say like, oh, you'll just train your brain to do it and blah, blah, blah. And I tried, I just didn't like the process way to do it. So I ended up turning it off. If I had to do it again, I would probably go with the S10e, and that's what I would recommend to get, honestly, because that fingerprint sensor on the side, I was trying it out at one of Samsung's events, and it really is placed very nicely there. And it even has gesture control on it, and it's really great. If there's any device to get, it's really the S10e, not the S10 or the S10 Plus in my opinion. There's also that great just flat screen. The edges on the S10 do distort the image a little bit on these sides. And yeah, I think just as a little side note here, if you're looking into these phones, I highly recommend looking into the S10e and not the other ones. Now what I ended up using to unlock the phone was face scanning. Just the same as my 10S, it works really great, and yeah, no problems there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a big issue I had was with the color temperatures of the display. Unfortunately, you can't really see it that well on camera, but when I took it out of the box, it was pretty much like almost super yellow. It was kind of crazy how yellow it was. I hadn't seen a screen this yellow in a while. I had to go to screen mode, change it to vivid so I could access a white balance slider, and then move it to the right, which did balance the colors significantly. Now that's something that personally bugs me just because I really noticed these slight differences in whites. I'm very particular about certain colors looking the right way. And while it wasn't an issue just in general usage, whenever I would look at an icon, I could see that it was a little bit off-white. Not a big fan of that. And again, since I already had the 10S, I was just thinking, it's not worth switching to something that I'm not 100% excited about or happy with. Now let's move on to an extra thing I didn't like that has to do with the Samsung One UI, which has been improved. Everything is very snappy. Samsung has done a great job of really making this much better than what they previously had. But for gesture navigation, it really is a drag compared to how Google does it on the Pixel and how Apple does it on the iPhone. I have no idea what Samsung was thinking here. I just could not like it. I mean, sure, you can go ahead and learn it, but it's a very mechanical movement what they've done here. It's not smooth, it's not intuitive, it's not fun to navigate the phone with the gestures. So pretty much I ended up just turning those off and using it without that bottom thing. The thing is that I really like gesture controls. I'm a huge fan of it, and I think I'm done with buttons, so I'm not gonna keep a phone that I'm gonna have to use the buttons when I'm already in this gesture train. I like the gestures, and I want it to be like either the Pixel or the iPhone more. Now, of course, that I'm going on a hate train and I'm mentioning all these negatives like crazy and everything, I thought I would just add in that the speakers do not sound great. The back of the phone vibrates whenever you're watching anything holding the phone in your hand and you're watching videos and movies and things like that. It's not a major negative. Of course, you're gonna plug in headphones anyway or something like that. But if you do have it out or anything, it's gonna vibrate a table. It's gonna vibrate your hand or anything more than any other device that I've felt in recent times, any other flagship that's out there. But yeah, I mean, those are the things that made me not like this phone all that much, and I've just decided, heck, I'll just stick with the XS. And I know that I seem like a brat complaining like, oh, you know, I'll just keep my current flagship device instead of switching to another flagship device. I understand how that sounds. It is silly, but you know, I'm just making a video. I'm explaining my thought process here. However, even if your phone right now is an S7 and S8, an iPhone 7 and iPhone 8, etc., or any other device released in the past couple of years, I highly recommend you just keep saving up and wait 6 months more to see what is coming out from other manufacturers. And if nothing captures your interest by then you can upgrade to an S10 or a XS or any phone that's a flagship right now and pay significantly less than what it's currently selling for. But more specifically, I do want to mention if you have an S8 or an S9, it's 100% not worth the upgrade. I think if I had to choose between an S9 or an S10, I think I would go for an S9 just because you don't have a notch. I mean, you still have a full screen if you're fine with just a couple little, you know, a bit of chin on top and bottom, then you get no notch that's obstructing the display. The thing with this like hole punch notch is that it now makes like a really large info bar with everything on games and things like that, and then you're not taking advantage of that extra space that you have there. So in games and things, now you have a bigger chin than what you had on the S9. So it's really not a benefit at all. It just looks really cool, it looks futuristic, but if you have an S8 or an S9, just keep your device for now. And now that's that about the S10. I mean, I have the XS, and it's also something I really can't recommend buying since it's just not worth the money. I think it's just too expensive considering phones like the S10 and phones from OnePlus and the Pixel, they're all just coming out with better price points and great features. But yeah guys, that's why I didn't end up keeping the S10. No clickbait, no fanboyism, no Android versus Apple debate, nothing like that. I wanted the phone, I bought the phone, I got the phone, I was switching to the phone, I was using the phone. I'm like, heck, you know what? The current phone I have does pretty much the exact same thing, and I like some of the features on my current phone more. I'm not gonna switch to the latest just because it's the latest and it looks really neat. If anything, and you're looking into the 10 series, I recommend the SE. I feel like that's a better device than the other two. But again, I honestly do not recommend upgrading to this or upgrading to any phone. If your current phone's working fine right now and you've held off for years, I would hold off another 6 months or so just to see what's up with 5G, what's up with foldable phones. You know, Motorola's got one coming out, Samsung's got one coming out, Huawei's got one coming out. And yes, I know those are like $2,000, $1,500, but once those come out, you know, we'll see price changes shift on, you know, normal phones and stuff. So even if nothing works for you then, you can get an S10 or you can get an XS or anything like that for much cheaper. So hold off, you know, you'll end up saving money in the long term. And I know that, you know, if you are always holding off for the next great thing, you will never end up buying anything. But I think this particular moment in time where 5G is coming and foldable phones are coming, we're kind of like at the end of an era and starting a new one. So I kind of highly recommend waiting so that you don't, you know, waste your money. But yeah guys, you can always reach out to me on Twitter at ArmardDNL or on Instagram at the same handle, and we can chat about this. If you have any questions or anything, I can always help you guys decide. And of course, you can comment down below. Let me know what pictures you guys ended up liking the most, the right or the left side. Of course, the answer to that is down below in the description so you guys can see that. Aside from that, I will catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye.